world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper. William Butler Yeats. It's time for science, and it is time to talk about going back to school with a first on It's Time for Science, talking to actual students. I'm talking with teacher Lisa Lacey about embedded assessment, student collaboration, academic vocabulary, and more after we listen to an interview Ms. Lacey conducted with two students, talking about their experiences in the science classroom. It's time for science, and it is time to talk to Lisa Lacey about the all-important concept of actively engaging students in learning through hands-on experience. Lisa is a third grade teacher at Lake and Heath Elementary, and when we reached out to her about this subject, she had the greatest suggestion that what if she got some of her kids to write up what they think hands-on learning, how it works, and get their perspective on it. So that's what we did. And as an added bonus, Lisa took the time to record them talking about it. So we'll be listening to that in a little bit. But we talk about kids all the time on this podcast, but it's about time they made an appearance here. So let's start off by talking to Lisa about these kids and the recording process. So Lisa, it was so wonderful of you to reach out to us when we talked about having this interview, and the idea of bringing the kids in was immediately exciting because we'd never done this on the podcast. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how that process came about. What did you have the kids prepare, and why? Why do you think all of that is so important to have them discuss this sort of thing?
Thank you for asking that question, because that's been a goal for me as an educator, is to empower students with their learning process. I didn't want to take ownership for their learning. My goal was to really empower them. And to doing that, it's answering the focus question, it's collaborating with others, and it's deciding to take part in the podcast. And for them, I had them work with me, and they chose which investigation they would like to respond to and show off a little bit about their answering the claim with evidence and reasoning, and using accountable talk to answer the focus question.
I always love hearing what people's favorite thing is anyway, whenever we talk about FOSS, like, which one actually hits them, why it does. So it's really cool to hear the kids talk about that. Can you talk a little bit about the kids you chose?
I chose two students that felt confident in the learning process. They really were interested in taking part in a podcast to show their learning and understanding in the process, along with using the accountable talk and prompts back and forth. They've been in classes together for several years. They're higher level learners. And to get them from just the concrete to the abstract, where they're answering the claim, giving the evidence, giving the reasoning, using page numbers, using the academic vocabulary, and the conversations that they had with each other, to me, that's empowering students with their own education.
So I want to talk a little bit about, you got the kids to write up their responses to this, and you worked together collaboratively before recording. How did that all work? What was that process like?
Well, in social studies, the students had to create a podcast. And then in that process, they had to interview someone, then practice their prompts that they were doing and their responses, and then they would record. And so in this process, I followed the same format. Students chose which investigation they wanted to speak on. They practiced what they wanted to say, and then they presented their work in the podcast. And we practiced, we'd stop and go over, but I really wanted the students to have that buy-in using their science notebook from FOSS, that format, and they shared their learning. I
think it's great. We often talk about interdisciplinary, how science helps other subjects, but it's nice to hear that other subjects help science at the same time, that kids they were learning from social studies and bringing that into science. I think that's great. And also, as a longtime podcaster, I know how much effort goes into doing these things and doing the research and writing. I think that's a fantastic way to get kids to be engaged.
Thank you. That was my goal this year as growing as an educator, was to empower the students. And when they came in, it was over their summer break, and they looked at their science notebook, and it was just the three of us. It was a collaborative team with the teacher. And to me, that is a real world situation. They got to use their science notebooks in a purposeful manner, and then also practice their public speaking skills, recording in real life situations.
So to reiterate, these kids, how old are these kids?
These students are 8 years old.
So that's excellent. Wow, that's amazing, because I've heard it, and we're about to listen to it now. So why don't we take a listen to these kids and Lisa talking to them about this amazing subject.
Hi, my name is Mrs. Lacey, and I'd like to introduce two third grade students, Olivia and Pax. We're here today to hear about how third grade students feel about using the FOSS curriculum. Pax, what is your favorite investigation and why?
In my opinion, my favorite investigation was what are some important features of a cart that will roll from here to there? Because I liked when we did hands-on activities because it was fun partnering up and building carts that will move flexibly with the wheels rolling instead of locking up. I also liked our collaboration because it was fun rolling carts down the hills, and I think me and my partner collaborated successfully because we rolled almost the furthest in the whole class.
Thank you, Paxton, for your response. Olivia, what do you think about Pax's reasoning on his favorite investigation?
In my opinion, what I think about Paxton's reasoning on what his favorite investigation was and why is that he used a lot of detail and he really explained his thinking. For example, he said why he liked collaborating and that he had a successful partnership because he rolled almost the farthest in the class.
Thank you for your comment, Olivia. I'd also like to hear your reasoning. What is your favorite investigation and why?
In my opinion, I think that my favorite investigation was how does water move down a slope because I enjoyed doing the hands-on activity. However, when I increased the size of a bead of water, it went faster, which surprised me because I thought it was going to go slower. But the bead did the opposite and went faster.
Thank you for your reasoning. I like how you gave examples of what surprised you and said, however, something else happened that surprised me.
Thank you both for sharing your favorite investigations. Pax, how has learning and using academic vocabulary helped you answer the focus question with the claim, evidence, and reasoning method?
Once again, what are some important features of a cart that will roll from here to there is my focus question. And for example, I claim some important features for a good cart to roll from here to there is one red wheel on each side of two axles. Also put two popsicle sticks on each side of the axles and use bearings to connect the popsicle sticks to the axles. Last, put one popsicle stick across the popsicle sticks from before and use two more bearings to connect the sticks on the others. This will help by taking off the tape so the wheels have more flexibility and so the wheels can roll. Before that, I had some difficulties, and my solution to reconstruct my cart was we're going to improve our cart by putting clips and popsicle sticks so the wheels can roll. Also, we will use more clips to combine the popsicles so they don't wobble around. Another thing is we are going to take off the tape so that the wheels have flexibility. We measured our data and the distancing from the top of the ramp was 8 centimeters, rolled 247 centimeters, 16 centimeters, rolled 194 centimeters, 24 centimeters, rolled 145 centimeters.
Olivia, what do you think about Paxton's claim?
In my opinion, what I think about Paxton's claim is that I liked how he said what you can do to make a good cart roll smoothly, and also I liked how he explained his thinking as well.
Thank you. Would you like to share yours?
Yes. My focus question was, how does water move down a slope? I claim that how water moves down a slope is that it will move diagonally, which is basically moving down because of gravity. I can prove and support my answer because of my observation. For example, I noticed that if you drop a small bead, it will go slower. However, if you drop a big bead of water, it will go faster. Also, the reason why the bead wouldn't break is because of the surface tension. That is why I claim that water will move differently while moving down a slope.
Thank you. I like how you used high vocabulary and you used the claim, evidence, and reasoning chart for your explanation.
Thank you both for sharing your favorite investigation and your claims and evidence and reasoning. Olivia, in your opinion, did participating in sense-making discussions help strengthen your responses to the focus question?
Yes, it did, because let's say, for example, if someone color codes their response and then they read it, and you do a sense-making discussion, it can strengthen your writing, because people can say maybe you need a bit more vocabulary, which will improve your writing. So basically, a recap of what I'm saying is that when you do sense-making discussions and you use discourse, you can maybe add a bit of improvement in your writing.
Thank you, Olivia, for sharing your response. Paxton, what do you think about sense-making discussions?
I agree with Olivia, and I'd like to add that participating in sense-making discussions does help to strengthen your responses to the focus question, because let's say that you're really strong at color coding and vocabulary, but you're not very strong at adding more data to your work, then someone can help you and maybe you can help them back with their writing.
Thank you both for sharing. So I'm hearing you both say that by using sense-making discussions, we are helping other people learn and you're learning from each other.
Yes. There's room for improvement.
I agree with you, Olivia. There's always room for improvement on answering the focus question.
Well, as I said earlier in the podcast, we haven't had any kids on to talk about the science aspect of it. That was fantastic. I love hearing what they had to say. I love the language they were using. They're obviously very engaged in the subject. And it's always wonderful to hear that because we preach the hands-on learning and the academic vocabulary, and it's great to hear that in Notion. I loved hearing Olivia talk about using her literacy skills to get her point across. Could you talk a little bit about that aspect of it, how these kids used all of that to get their points?
Yes, thank you for hearing what she was saying. That was a huge growth for all the students. She actually took pride and did a step beyond by putting examples, and that's where it's hard to get students to really take that ownership. So what I noticed when I was teaching is that I would follow the FOSS curriculum exactly to the point, but I really needed to focus on the embedded assessment notes. And in that, I really wanted to help students answer that and be more successful in their responses. And to do it, the students needed to answer their claim and then give reasoning. And to do that, they needed to find the text evidence. And that's either coming from the articles through FOSS that are in the science books, their observations during the science investigation, or even what their observations were.
One of the things we always come back to about science in general, but especially from the FOSS perspective, is the sense-making aspect of things. You learn something, but then you have to make sense of it. So let's talk a little bit about that. As after the lesson has happened, as bringing the kids back to a situation where now you have to talk about them, see if they got the sense make. And some kids may not be willing or want to speak out loud, or they may be reticent. So I want you to talk a little bit. You've got some great tips about that, and how important is sense-making in general?
That is the key piece that I think makes the FOSS program works at the end of the session. Once they've finished the investigation and they're using the hands-on seeds and they're finding the different mass of soaked seeds compared to dry seeds, once they go through all that process and they write in their science notebook, I don't want that learning to just pause. I want them to go deeper into their understanding and to start talking about it. And to do that, after the investigation, they come to the carpet and we sit in a circle. And what the students do is I'll ask the questions to the students, and then they will use hand signals to agree and disagree. They want to add on, and then gradually the students will grow into using discourse with agreeing with each other using academic vocabulary and sentences. And then my next step is to have a student be facilitator in the classroom where they're calling on other students and they're responding to each other. So to me, that's where I can see what the students understand and what they've carried away from that lesson.
The concept of hand signals has come up a couple times in the podcast. I think that's wonderful. I know that I, as a young learner, was very eager to be involved, but very shy, sitting in the back, not wanting to say anything. So I love the idea that hand signals can maybe embolden kids and then move them to the next level. And have you seen that happen? Have you seen kids sort of come out of their shell and suddenly get very excited about bringing their opinions to the table?
Yes, every single year when they come in, they're really shy when they walk through that third grade classroom. And to me, building a classroom environment and building a safe environment for the students where they feel like they can share their ideas is really important. And to do that, it's through hand signals first. All the students that maybe are shy, they have difficulty speaking in front of others, they can participate in that lesson and engage by using the hand signals. And that allows all students to participate in the lesson. And then through modeling, the other students that are more comfortable will begin to answer the focus question and respond to each other. And then the students that are using hand signals will start to engage in the conversation.
That must be one of the most fulfilling things as a teacher by the end of the year, to see these kids come out of their shell and to start, really getting into sense making and talking and discussion with other kids. That's very exciting.
That definitely is one of our goals in our school, is student discourse and using student engagement. I wish you could see what they're doing with this FOSS program. And the missing piece for me was getting them to talk in the science and take ownership of the science and write the science claims. So without the literacy component, they're not able to do that.
I mean, I've been working with FOSS for a long, long time as a video guy, and I've seen it in action. I've filmed inside classrooms, and it's wonderful. I love the idea. I see the aha moments happen literally on screen as I film them, and it's a wonderful thing, the way it's set up for really having the kids do all of that. Here's the problem. Let's figure it out. And I love that aspect of it. And let's talk a little bit about that. I was just like, getting kids to discuss these things is obviously at the heart of science itself. It's always questioning what's next and figuring that out. And I want to talk a little bit about that, how important that is, and also how that extends into life in general, about how those kind of discourses using evidence and learning how to work together, how important that is to teach kids.
Students need to be able to collaborate with others. And once they collaborate with others and they're able to explain their thinking, then I think they can take that through other subject areas and be more successful.
So it applies into everything they're going to do from this point on. And in third grade, you're definitely setting the foundation for, much more complex things in the coming years in middle school and high school.
Working as a team is really hard for students because they want to do it their way, or they're not comfortable working with another student. So working with this FOSS collaboratively encourages students to work together, and they can grow from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And that's what we see with Olivia and Pax, is that they've worked together in collaborative groups throughout the year, so they're more comfortable working together and learning how to respond off of each other's focus questions and their conversation pieces. And to me, that's where we grow as individuals.
I know that one of the things that you've been working for, a goal that you have, is using academic vocabulary to answer focus questions using scientific explanations. And there's the model that you bring up of claim, evidence, and reasoning. And I'd like to have you explain your view on that. What does that mean to you, the claim, evidence, and reasoning part?
To me, that's the critical part of FOSS at the end of the science investigations. You really get a sense of students' understanding by looking at their responses. And to do that, there's in the seed soak lesson, it says, I claim that a seed is blank. My evidence is blank. But just like in literacy, students need more support in being able to answer that model. So what I'd like to do is have a check sheet, a success criteria, where students can answer the question. They have a little checkbox, and they underline it in their response, in their student notebook. And then they have to use text evidence. And that could be from the investigation, that can be from the observations, or from reading in the articles. And once they put the text evidence there, then they have to go to their reasoning where it ties the claim and the text evidence together. So then you can see where the students are starting to develop and their vocabulary starts to come in more. Usually I like the students to put a little red dot over all the academic vocabulary from FOSS that they have in their response, and they start to listen to each other, and they use each other's response as a model on what their science investigation response should sound like for their claim.
That's great. I love tying actually physically calling out the words and that they have to use. They're not just words, they're words being used for a specific purpose. I think that's excellent.
Right. And I love how FOSS has their vocabulary in the unit. So you can print them out and the students have them up in the wall, on the word wall, and they can pull that out. They don't have to worry about spelling the word correctly or incorrectly. It's already on the wall, and they are more successful in their responses.
That's great. And it probably helps you as a teacher kind of assessing how each student is doing, right?
Yes, I'm glad you pointed that out, because in the embedded assessment notes, that's where you can quickly see when you're looking at the science notebooks which student has it and which student doesn't have the concept. And then you can differentiate and call them back and see, let's look at your investigation and then look at your answer. Do they match? And then they can see, oh, I didn't say this part of my claim. And then you can help them scaffold on how to make their responses stronger.
And even see that they understand the claim and the evidence, but maybe not the reasoning, or they're missing something in the middle. I think that's great. It's a great way to keep track of their progress.
And thank you. And what I notice with students is that they learn from each other, not just from the teacher. So once a student in the class starts using it fluently, then the other students hear that and they can help each other build their answer. So it's not just the teacher facilitating the learning. The students take ownership of that. They help each other, and the learning and academic achievement increases by the end of the year.
One of the things, as we wrote back and forth setting up this interview, is that you're very focused on improving as an educator and improving the way the kids learn. I just wanted to ask you, as a sum up, what is the most important thing for you? What is it, the thing that you're focused on most as a teacher to help your kids?
I would definitely say the embedded assessment notes, because at the end of the day, at the end of the lesson, you want to be able to see as a teacher what your students are taking away from your lesson. And if they're embedded assessment notes and they're understanding when the focus question falls short of where you want it to be, you can go back and differentiate the learning. But to me, knowing what the standards are, what the investigation is, what the embedded assessment notes, and then looking at each individual journal as a quick check, this student has it, this student doesn't. So to sum that question up, I'd say, to me as an educator, the best part is looking at what the focus is and what the students are trying to achieve by the end of the lesson.
Lisa, this has been great because I really enjoyed listening to the kids in their own voices. We talk to teachers all the time, which is, of course, the point of the podcast, but I love the idea of hearing from the kids themselves what they liked and how they go about it. And I can't thank you enough for bringing that to us, and also this discussion about everything else. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode might come a little late for some of you this year, but it isn't our first time talking about going back to school on the podcast. For more tips and tricks, check out It's Time for Science episodes 3 and 14. We'll include links in the show notes. We'll also include links to articles we've published on setting goals and preparing your science classroom for back to school, as well as getting ready for a new school year with science. We also really want to hear from you, our listeners. What do you want to hear on upcoming episodes? What subjects would you like to talk about? Drop us a line through the Contact Us form. The link is in the show notes as well. And as always, thanks for listening, and please like and subscribe. It's Time for Science is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lippman and Tom Racine, and is sponsored by School Specialty and FOSS, the full option science system, at the Lawrence Hall of Science, UC Berkeley. Be sure to check out FOSS on Facebook and Instagram.